Okay, and we're live. Thank you guys so much for joining our Madrid planning webinar today with Walks and Devour Tours. This is our second webinar that we've done so far with Walks and Devour, and it is such a treat to be doing one on Madrid. So Madrid has a very special connection to Devour Tours because this is actually where Devour Tours got their start. Even though today you can take a Devour tour in Boston or Bordeaux, Madrid will always have a very special connection to us because it is where we started and it is where the co-founders, Lauren and James, are still living today. So I can't wait to bring them in and have them give you all their insider tips for navigating the city like a local. Before we get started though, just a few things. Please try to stay all the way until the end if you can. We will be sharing a very special discount with you on our Madrid tours. If you do have to hop though, that's all cool too. We will be sending you an email after the webinar ends with a recording of the webinar so you can go back and watch it. We'll also include some links to our favorite Madrid resources, and we'll be sharing our discount code for our Madrid tours. So first things first, my name's Cassandra. I'm part of the Walks and Devour crew, and I also happen to call Madrid home. So I'm very excited about our conversation today as well. And my question for you guys who are tuning in today is, have you been to Madrid before? And let us know in the chat. I'm also curious to know, when is your trip to Madrid? I have just started a poll, which you should see on your screen. So please go ahead and answer that. We're so curious to know, are you coming later this year for the holidays? Are you coming next year? Do you not have a trip planned quite yet? Please do let us know, because this is going to help Lauren and James to answer your questions with this timing in mind. All right. While we're letting people answer the poll, I am going to dive in and talk a little bit about our company and our two brands, Walks and Devour. If you're on the call today, you probably are already familiar with Devour Tours. We at Devour really pride ourselves on connecting curious travelers with the local food and people in a way that helps culture thrive. So we do this by taking you to our favorite markets, meeting our favorite vendors, helping you recreate our favorite local dishes. And these things are really going to help bring that culture alive in a way that you might not experience if you were just there by yourself. So we absolutely love taking you to our favorite restaurants and introducing you to the small businesses, which are often run by mom and pop companies, so that you get to really meet the people behind the counter and get to understand the culture in a way that really demystifies these iconic and delicious destinations. We have food and history tours, cooking classes, and gourmet food and wine tours as well. I will say, if you are planning a trip to Madrid, please also keep in mind that we have tours in cities that people often pair with a trip to Madrid. So this would be Lisbon in Portugal, as well as other Spanish destinations like Barcelona, San Sebastian, and Seville. So make sure to check those out. Our sister company, Walks Tours, is also operating in Madrid. And Walks Tours, although it started in Rome, has a very, very similar ethos to Devour. We pride ourselves at Walks on our small group sizes, our expert guides, and our special access. In this photo here, you can see our Madrid guide, Alfonso, taking a tour with the group in the Prado Museum. We actually have a VIP Prado experience that brings our tour group into the Prado before general entry hours. So really, the only people who are in this amazing art museum, apart from the museum employees, is our tour group. So it really is a really wonderful way to get to see this art museum in a way that is very unique without the crowds. So if you are planning a trip to Madrid or to one of our other destinations, make sure to check in on our Walks tours as well. And my question for you guys, I have another poll for you, is, have you ever taken a Walks tour or a Devour tour before? Very curious to hear about that. And while people are answering, I also wanted to share the results of the previous poll, which is, when is your trip to Madrid? And it looks like the overwhelming majority has a trip later this year. So that's very exciting. I wonder if you'll be here for the holidays. Many people are also coming later next year in the spring. And some people also don't have a trip planned. So there's a lot to consider there. I personally don't think there's ever a bad time to visit Madrid, although it can get very, very hot in the summer months. But those of you who are coming later this year, you really are in for a treat. Our Madrid operations manager, Kate, was recently just saying that December in Madrid is basically like a hidden secret. So those of you who are coming at that time will get to experience what she means firsthand. And then the results of our poll about have you taken a Walks or Devour tour before? So it looks like over half of you have never taken a tour with us. 8% have taken a Walks tour and 27% have taken a Devour tour, with a handful having taken both Walks and Devour tours. So that's great. That's really interesting. I definitely hope you will consider taking a tour with us when you visit Madrid or Spain. All right, so without further ado, I really am so excited to introduce your Madrid travel experts. They are the co-founders of Devour Tours, Lauren, Aloise, and James Blick. So first of all, welcome, Lauren. Welcome to the event today. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming. I'm seeing, I think, 102 people in the virtual room. Well, it's weird not to see your faces. It's lovely to meet you. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm Lauren. You'll notice from my accent that I'm originally from North America. I'm from Massachusetts in the US, but I've been living in Spain for 15 years and Madrid for about 13 of those. I have my family here, my life here, and I would say I am an honorary madrileña. I am the co-founder of Devour Tours. James and I started this project way back in 2012, and it's been such an exciting experience to watch it grow and flourish and go outside of Spain to all of these other amazing destinations. But I remain, like I said, a Madrid local. And today I'm really just excited to share with you some of the secret kind of tips I might have, certainly my favorite foods. I can share with you information about traveling with families. I have 2 little 5-year-olds that keep me on my toes, and who I proudly say love chocolate chip cookies from their grandmother as much as they do lentil stew from their abuela. And yeah, so I look forward to fielding your questions. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here today. I know you're so busy, so we really are thrilled to have you. And James, thank you so much for joining us as well. James, you are often traveling to different corners of Spain, so we're so glad we caught you.
Yeah, no, great to be here. I'm in Bilbao right now, busy street outside. Luckily, there's soundproof windows in this hotel, so you can hear what I'm saying. So yeah, just up here, about to film tomorrow a food tour video for my YouTube channel, Spain Revealed, eating in the Pincho bars of Bilbao. But yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm originally from New Zealand. I've lived in Madrid for about 12 years, maybe it's 13 now. Came for love, fell in love with a Spaniard in France, and she's my wife. And also when I came here, I fell in love with Madrid and Spain. Originally, I was working as a travel writer, and then I decided to start guiding, met Lauren, designed our second tour, Devour, the Tapas, Taverns, and History tour, because I've always loved tapas bars and history, and it was just a great way to combine those. And fast forward, how many years is it now? 12 years later. So I guess I've been here longer than 12 years now. I need to update my bio. Fast forward 12 years later, and really proud of the company that Devour has grown into. And you know, when we first started, the real mission was to share the city that Lauren and I were falling in love with, and the culture through its food, and connecting people who are traveling. It could be hard to connect and understand the local culture, the local food, connect with business owners who are preparing and serving that food, and really that's what we wanted to do. And it's just so great to see, you know, how far it's grown. These days, I also help people actually relocate to Spain through a brand called Spain Revealed. I run a course called the Move to Spain Masterclass that helps people move to Spain. So, but I also love helping people, just even if you're visiting, exploring. And so I'm super excited to help today with, you know, sharing what I know and love about Madrid. I have a 3-year-old, so I don't hit the tapas bars as much as I used to. So I feel like my my vermouth chops are a little rusty these days, but I'm sure expertise is relative, right? So I'm sure I can help.
That's great. Yeah, and we also have several questions about kids, so your insider info will still come in handy there. Awesome. Well, it's so great to have both of you. I am going to shutter the presentation for now, so your videos are a little bit larger on the screen. But let's go ahead and get right into it. We had over 100 questions that were submitted. There's a lot of interest in getting to know Madrid. About half of the people who signed up for the webinar have never been to Madrid. So with those people in mind, I thought we would start out with some general trip planning info for somebody who's never been to Madrid. And Lauren, I really want to start off this first question with you by asking you how Madrid compares to other cities, because we did get several questions comparing Madrid to other European cities. And one person in particular was curious to know, does Madrid get as packed with tourists as other big European capitals like London, Rome? And also, is there an off season? And if so, when is it?
Those are great questions. Let me start by saying, for the 50% of you who have not been to Madrid, I hope that this webinar will inspire you to at least start planning a trip. It's a fantastic city. And I think that it's a really interesting question and a way to start this conversation off, comparing it to other destinations. Because one of the, I think, unique things about Madrid is that it's a city where you don't necessarily come with the long checklist of monuments and things that you must visit, must see, must do when compared to places like Florence or Rome, for example, or Paris or London. It's a city that you really experience fully with all of your senses, which, I mean, of course we do that wherever we travel, but I think that not having the pressure of having to like climb the Eiffel Tower or visit the Colosseum, it takes a little bit of a load off that allows you to really immerse yourself in the way that Madrileños spend the day, which when people ask me what that means, it's, well, you're walking, you're stopping and eating or drinking a coffee or something, a Coca-Cola even. You're people watching, you're window shopping, maybe sometimes you're really shopping as well. You're walking through a park, you're going to a tapas bar, you're grabbing a vermouth. It is a constant, you're living, they say in Spanish, like on the streets, which doesn't have the same connotation as it does in English, but you're out and about. Your house is not, the place where you're having your meetings with friends and family. You're out and about, and you really experience that in Madrid. And so, no, it doesn't get as crowded. It's grown immensely in tourism in the 10 or so years, or 12 or so years that we've been doing these tours, but it is more spread out. It is a large capital city with a lot of neighborhoods to explore. And the must-sees, like the Prado, the Royal Palace, the Reina Sofia, they are quite distributed. So it's not like they're all in this one little tiny area that also has all of the shops and restaurants. So of course, if you go into the Sol, which is like the heart of the city, it's called, the metro stop is called Sol. You might find crowds, especially at peak parts of the year, but it's definitely a very, very different experience from Rome, Florence, London, Paris on the high season. And the low season is really, as it is in any major tourist destination in Europe, more or less from mid-November to mid-February, early March. That's the lowest season. And I agree with Kate Cassandra. It's interesting that she said that before this call, our Madrid operations manager, because I also think December is an amazing time to visit the city. You'll see all sorts of Christmas traditions. It'll be very local, but you'll most likely have sunshine and like 60-ish degree weather in Fahrenheit. So yeah, I think it's a great place to visit.
Excellent. No, I think you bring up a really great point. And yeah, it is hard to compare Madrid to other European cities. And maybe we shouldn't even try. Maybe we should just encourage everybody to visit and see for themselves what an amazing place it is. So in a similar vein, James, we also got several questions comparing Madrid to other cities in Spain. So if you were to compare Madrid, I know this is probably a hard thing to do, but if you were to compare Madrid to other cities such as Barcelona, what would you say makes Madrid unique? And how does it differ to a city like Barcelona?
Yeah, I think, I think when you visit a country for the first time, say a difference between Madrid and Barcelona, it might be harder to kind of notice those differences because everything is so new and everything feels so Spanish. But they are very different cities, in feel and food and history and culture. If we take the culture, I mean, Spain is a regional country where it feels like people's allegiance is often not even to Spain, but to their own village where they're from. There's a lot of allegiance to kind of the region you're from and the area you're from. So I think when you go to a place like Barcelona, you really feel that local culture. You feel the Catalan culture, right? Which is a part of Spain, but it's also has so many. You might see human towers, right? People climbing up these really tall towers. Or you'll find that when you're walking around, you'll see obviously a different language. You'll see signs in Catalan, whereas in Madrid, you'll see signs in Castellano and Spanish, and you're not going to see any human towers. So I always think that in all these things I'm going to say, if you can read up a little bit about the two cities before you come, like, what is Madrid, what is the kind of culture of Madrid, what's the culture of Barcelona, what is the food of each place, then you will be prepped to kind of notice those differences and actually enjoy each place for what it is. So in Madrid, there's a stronger tapas tradition. There's tapas in Barcelona, but it's actually a more recent concept. Traditionally, there wasn't such a strong idea of going out for tapas like there is in Madrid. And so, and Madrid is famous for having really busy, packed bars, people standing up and shoulder to shoulder, whereas in the Catalan culture, it's more of a sit down, sort of eating a meal, more of a Northern European culture when it comes to eating. As I say, when you go the first time, you might think, well, there's just like tapas bars in each. But when you start to notice, you start to kind of feel a bit of that difference. And really, these days, they do feel quite similar in terms of the tapas vibe, because Barcelona, as such a tourist destination, has kind of taken on a lot of that. And also, Spain is more homogenous than I guess it once was between the regions. And also history, Madrid's a new city. So when you're walking around, you're not going to see Roman ruins, right? But you can see those in Barcelona because it started as a camp for retired Roman soldiers who had been fighting wars in the Roman Empire. So you can see old, temple columns from 2,000 years ago, whereas in Madrid, the oldest thing you're going to see is maybe 500-600 years ago. So all these things are, in terms of the tourist things you do, like eating, culture, exploring, you're going to notice those differences. I think just also on a feel thing, Barcelona obviously is a port city. It has the sea, it has the beach. And so you've got that. Madrid doesn't have that. But I think Barcelona has a kind of that gritty sort of Mediterranean feel. It's more humid. It feels like a port city. Whereas when you go to Madrid, it feels a little bit more like a buttoned up capital in some ways, a little bit more, I wouldn't say ordered, because Madrid is known for actually being the place where there's more partying in Madrid than Barcelona, but it feels a little more, a little kind of less kind of shaggy in some ways. And I kind of love Barcelona's sort of shaggy port vibe. So I would just say there's just a really different vibe between both. And I think you owe it to yourself when you go, to read up about both, because then you'll notice the differences and you'll take advantage of the different culture a lot more. I mean, I love them both. Look, I'm not going to lie, right? And it's beautiful. It's 2.5 hours on the train between them. So you can, just don't do what somebody once told me on a tour. They were going to go to Barcelona for a day trip from Madrid. That is doable, but it's tough. That sounds like a long day, but it's theoretically doable, but I wouldn't advise it. So rather than saying kind of what makes Madrid special, I think it's sort of like they're both special. They're just both different in the same way Seville's different. And so I think if you can kind of learn it, like if I was going to, Japan, I don't know what the difference is really between Tokyo and Kyoto, like really, right? But I'm sure there's so many differences. And so if I kind of read a bit, then I'll enjoy those differences even more. I'll know what to look out for.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. And I must admit, I love your description of Barcelona as shaggy. I've never
I was looking for a word and I couldn't come up with one. So yeah,
I'm going to borrow that. That's amazing. Great. So when it comes again to some of the practicalities of planning a trip, we got several questions around different activities that people should do. And
oops, I think we might be having some technical difficulty.
We lost you there, Cassandra. Well, this is like live TV, right? So we have to pick up when stuff happens. So what are the top things to do? Thinking on the spot here.
To surface today
Okay,
is this question about get your answers.
Okay.
A little bit about which.
All right. I don't think Cassandra has realized that she's breaking up yet, but we're going to go ahead and hopefully, Cassandra, you can hear us, and we're going to go ahead and answer the question on what are some of the top things to do, the kind of must-see checklist that I said kind of doesn't exist, but then again, kind of does in Madrid. And all, maybe we can go back and forth and like ping pong this out, James. But like, so I'm going to go ahead and say something that it's actually interesting. I saw in the chat, someone described themselves as not really a museum goer. Well, you know, remind my life 15 years ago when I first came to Spain, and I think I felt the same way. I had never studied art or art history, and I was very intimidated by the fact that I didn't really know what I was looking at. But now, after doing many, many great tours, of course, of the museums here in Madrid and elsewhere, the Prado is a must. You cannot come to Madrid and miss the Prado. It is a collection of incredible art, but what's really, I think, interesting about the Prado is all of the history and the connection to this city that the art has. And when you learn kind of the stories and the narratives that go around the art and the times in history that these paintings were acquired, the royal families or the people that eventually ended up giving them to the museum, it's like a treasure trove, and it's really awe-inspiring to be inside of the Prado. And gosh, on our alone tour, if you're able to take that, if it's running while you come to Madrid, it's like once in a lifetime. So I will say the Prado is a must. James, a must from you?
Yeah, I would say, look, you want to, to take a food topic, you want to experience Madrid's tapas scene. I was talking about like in Barcelona, Barcelona, for example, you're not going to find rows of tapas bars, right? But in Madrid, you can find that there, because of that sort of tapas culture where there's a lot more bars, I think, generally. And when we say bars, someone once said a comment on my YouTube channels like, you and your wife keep talking about bars. Are you alcoholics? I'm like, no. When we say bar in Spain, we mean tapas bar, like a place you go to eat and drink, of course. But they could also be a place for breakfast as well. So, or a cup of coffee. So I would say, like, you want to experience Madrid's tapas scene. I'll give you two kind of different ways to do that. One is you could go along Calle Cava Baja. I know someone on the team will write that in the chat. I won't try and do too many things at once. Calle Cava Baja is just like a strip of like tapas bars, and it's where the city walls used to be in the medieval times. And so it's where the inns used to be on the outskirts of the city, where travelers would stop coming into the city. And so that tradition is kind of kept alive, and there's some old inns there, and there's some more, just obviously more recent tapas bars. But you can just kind of literally bar hop along the street, kind of tasting tapas at different places. I always recommend starting with a vermouth cocktail at a place called La Concha. And then just kind of like work your way along, because it's just so much fun. And so apart from that, I would say if you want to have another kind of tapas experience, there's an area called Ibiza, like the same name as the island, but it's actually a neighborhood in Madrid on the other side of the Retiro Park, on the eastern side, like away from like the center of the city. And that also has a lot of tapas bars. It's a different vibe. It's a little more upscale, so it's not quite the same kind of bar hopping vibe, but there's so many places you can eat there. The food is really good. I think one I ate at, I've always loved, and I ate again there recently and really enjoyed it. It's called La Castella. They have great seafood there. And so you can just kind of hit all these places and experience all the locals and just kind of like see where the locals are. There's a lot of terraces. We say terraces, like, tables outside, and then wander through I was going to say the Prado, but you don't want to wander through the Prado after you've hit the tapas bars. Maybe do it before. Wander through the Retiro Park, and then, which is just alongside. So I would say that those are a couple of great ideas for experiencing Madrid's kind of food scene, really.
Yeah, those are all great suggestions. There's so much to do in Madrid. We could talk about food, and we will circle back around to food in just a minute. But going back to trip planning, what about for somebody who has been to Madrid before and they're planning a second trip? What kind of insider tips would you have for them to experience on their second trip? And also day trips. Where should people go if they have enough days in the capital to then get outside of the city? Lauren, I'll start with you if you've got a handy response.
I mean, it's hard with any large capital city, and I mean probably even smaller cities. It's like you could live here for many years and still have so many things to do. So I mean, it really depends on your interests, but Madrid is full of museums, right? And so it's not just the Prado and the Reina Sofia. We have a lot of different museums that are worth visiting if that's your thing. Now, if it's not your thing, or it's your thing but you have other things, we also have a lot of green spaces. Madrid is interestingly one of the greenest cities in Europe, and in part that's because of its enormous Casa de Campo park, which was the old hunting grounds of the royal family. And so you can go there, and they have a beautiful man-made like lake with restaurants surrounding it that was redone in the past 5 years. Some good restaurants around there as well. You kind of like a lovely day where you're just really in views of the royal palace, and you're in like a lovely atmosphere that's very local. Madrid's a great city to just get lost in the local ambiance, and neighborhood hops. So even if you've been here before, I'm sure you have not been to, I have not been to all the neighborhoods in Madrid. I don't even know how many there are, but the kind of the main neighborhoods that aren't necessarily the touristic ones, but the ones within the highway loop, the M30 highway loop, are some of the more populated and historic neighborhoods, and there are many of them. And I recommend really neighborhood hopping, getting the feel for each one, checking out places like La Latina on Sundays when they have the Rastro Flea Market and all of the great kind of paraphernalia that goes along with that. Checking out Ibiza, where James mentioned, which is a little more upscale and has great food. Tueca, Malasaña for shopping boutiques, funky little new age kind of shops and coffee bars and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a city where you really want to explore, and I think you can come time and time again and you'll find plenty to do.
And I think on the neighborhood aspect, if you're looking for, often people understandably want to stay outside the historic center. If you're looking to kind of stay more with his people living and see what real life is like in Madrid. I think just because I was there this week with my daughter, Chamberí is a great neighborhood. It's actually a really big neighborhood. So the more southern part of it, which is closer to the center, is a cool neighborhood that has a lot of restaurants. It has the Plaza Olavide. I think Kate's going to be writing these things in the chat just to make sure you get the spelling, which is just a beautiful square that's been redone. And it was just so nice the other night at dusk. I got burgers with my daughter, and then we went to the playgrounds after that. And there was just couples walking, sitting on the benches. So it was just a really nice, and it's not far from the center as well. And so I think that's a really great neighborhood to get that kind of local vibe. In terms of day trips, I would say that I wouldn't overthink this if you've never been to Madrid. Like Toledo and Segovia are like the classics for a reason. Those are both within less than an hour from Madrid by train. And both are similar in a way. It's a bit like Madrid and Barcelona. They can kind of feel similar, but once you go and you understand, they're actually quite different. I think Segovia, which is to the north, is a city, a town you can visit on your own. Really, the kind of key things to do there are to go and have suckling pig at a place called Jose Maria is I think the best place for it. The incredible Roman aqueduct there. And then just kind of wander through to the castle, which is kind of like you walk the length of Segovia. That's kind of what you do in Segovia. Toledo is a lot more, it's got a lot more history. It's really multi-layered, the history. And so Roman, Moorish, Christian, Jewish. And so I think for Toledo, I would struggle to go to, I think you need to have a tour in Toledo. I think it's hard to see that city on your own. It's too overwhelming. There's just too much. And so again, it's just to the south, but we did actually a team building with our team at Devour with a guide. And I'd never really understood Toledo until then. I found it a little bit like, not boring, because I love history and it's not boring, but I just kind of like didn't get it. And then when we did a tour, it was like, oh, wow, this is like one of the most incredible places to visit in the world. So I think Toledo is great with a tour. And then after that, there's kind of like the if you've been to Madrid before and you've done those trips, there's There's a bunch of other day trips you can go to. Aranjuez is one to the south, which is really beautiful. They've got a palace there that you can visit. Chinchon is great. There's a really medieval plaza, medieval square you can sit above and eat. And there's some cool, just exploring that. There's some cool old wineries you can visit. Those are a couple that kind of spring to mind.
Yeah, you definitely won't lack any options. Speaking of day trips, Lauren, do you have a favorite day trip?
Oh, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to say Toledo as well. And yeah, the tour that we took for our team building many years ago was really eye-opening to get that kind of access to visit it with all of the knowledge of, I mean, it's just a city with so much history and so many layers that it's just overwhelming if you don't have that insight. I also really like visiting Segovia because it's like less pressure. Those are the two I usually bring people to when they come to visit because they're the most popular ones. But I was recently in both Chinchon and Aranjuez. So if you've been here before, those are two that I would recommend. And one of my favorites, actually, now that I've gotten there, this is not far from Segovia. So especially if you were to rent a car, you could do both in a day or even like grab a taxi. Since Segovia is so easy to access on the train or by bus. But La Granja de San Ildefonso. It's about, probably like 10 or 15 minute drive from the city of Segovia. And it is an enormous palace and beautiful Versailles style gardens that have the views of like the mountains of the area and just like this crisp Segovia air and enormous, beautiful fountains that handful of times a year, I mean, a few times a month, I think, during the majority of the year, they will have the fountains running, or at least certain fountains, and they are just incredible. So yeah, I really recommend that. And everyone I've taken there has also been very, very impressed.
Yeah, that's an excellent option as well. And yeah, you can't go wrong with any of these, but love all of the suggestions you guys are putting out. I did want to circle back around to a good point that James made about just the power of this tour guide really bringing Toledo to life for him. And I wanted to circle back around to our tours that we offer at Walks and Devour and just pose the question, maybe to you to start this off, Lauren, but what in your mind would be some of the top tours that you would encourage people to do when they come to Madrid?
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's hard. It's like, I always say that's like trying to choose your favorite child. Okay. So even though I'm co-founder of Devour, I'm actually going to start with some of the walks tours, because if it is a first time in Madrid, I think you really can't go wrong with our Madrid in a day, because you do get just a bit of those top sites. So you'll get the Royal Palace, which I actually I did this tour very recently myself and had never done a guided tour of the Royal Palace. And I guess this sounds very repetitive at this point, but like, yeah, seeing it with a guide was a different experience, and really, really cool. So I really enjoyed that. And then we also go to the Prado and we see parts of historic Madrid and some great viewpoints. And so it's just very complete. We also stop for churros, which is nice. And then, I mean, our Alone in the Prado is, again, like I said, once in a lifetime kind of tour to enter that museum, especially when you've seen it busy and be literally alone, apart from about 30 security guards that are like kind of following us. Maybe not that many, but they're there. They're keeping an eye. No photography. You know, they want to make sure that we're respectful, and we are. But that was just an emotional experience, I would say. And then on Devour's end, this is where it's hard because it is like, again, choosing your favorite child, but I think Tapas Taverns in History is a really fantastic tour. It's one of the first ones we put out in this entire company, and we ended up doing a similar concept in the other Spanish cities, combining a tapas tour with a light but thorough historic walking tour of the city. And it's just an amazing combination because You are learning really about the city and its history, stopping to eat awesome food and learning about the city through its food as well, and having an experience. It's not just, we call our tours, but really we started Devour Tours before the word experiences we see so much in tourism. And I mean, they're really experiences. You're bonding with the small group, your guide, you're getting an insider's perspective, you're meeting some of the staff or the owners of these bars and restaurants. So I think that's a fantastic tour that we offer. That really ticks a lot of boxes for people. And then I also love our Ultimate Spanish Cuisine Tour, which was the first tour we started offering in the company and in Madrid. It's changed a little bit since the early days as time has gone by, but I love it because it's not just focused on the tapas part, and you're going to visit places like bakeries, markets, you'll try jamon, and you'll try olives and olive oil. And so it's just a really complete experience, and you'll learn about Spain's cuisine and kind of Madrid as this melting pot city, this planned capital that, as James said, is kind of new. It's got a lot of different cuisine from different parts of Spain that we can try. So yeah, I don't know, they're all amazing. You can't go wrong, but those are some of my highlights.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. James, did you want to add anything to that? We've also got several questions about just what it takes to set up a tour. I don't know if you want to maybe give some insider sneak peeks into what that involves without, going into too many details.
In terms of like to design a tour?
In terms of designing a tour, we had questions about, how do you choose the tapas bars and restaurants that you go to? How do you work with the vendors? What does it take to design a tour? And James, I know you mentioned also tapas, taverns, and history at the beginning of the webinar. So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about the origin stories of that tour and how it came to be.
Well, I think when I designed that tour, I didn't know how to design a tour. So I was just kind of figuring it out, taking people to my favorite places and sharing them, my favorite squares and then telling them historical stories. But I guess in the end, something, that was really, has always been important in Devour when you're picking a place to include on a tour is, because we went through a whole learning process, right? You start a company, you start offering a tour and it's like, it's good and it has success. And you kind of almost have to reverse engineer. How did that happen? Like, why is that good? Because you didn't know really, you'd never designed a tour before. So I think we, over the years learned a lot, about how you would create a good experience. It's kind of like when you pick a place, it has to have what we'd say like a sense of place. It has to have a sense of place. So if you go to a tapas bar in Barcelona, or you go to one in Seville or in Madrid, or a restaurant in Rome, right? Or wherever, how does that place speak to Madrid or Rome or Barcelona? How does it help someone understand that place better? And I think that's really important because it has to earn its place on a tour. So if you go in there, it gives the guide an opportunity to obviously through the food, share the culture, the food, the history of the place, and just through the ambiance and through the way the place works, right? And so different cultures have different ways of eating, and you want your guests on a tour to almost be armed with knowledge so they can do it better on their own afterwards. So if you go to places that are indicative, then they're going to get skills to then tackle restaurants on their own. And also, it's always been really important for us that there's some personality and some story behind it, that it's not, that's not sort of a faceless corporation, that there's personalities. Now, whether it's mom and pop behind the bar or in the kitchen, obviously, it can be pretty restrictive if that's always the case. But it might be that, the people who are running it and the manager have a lot of personality who can help, also help you feel welcome in the city and connect with the guests on the tour. But also, again, help the guests kind of understand something about how the culture is, right? I mean, even in Madrid, I remember on my first tours, like I would have to, let people know that, the bars are going to be really busy. You have to you need to learn skills for how to go into them because people would be scared to go into a busy tapas bar. So it's kind of empowering them. So I think designing a tour in terms of picking the food place is all about that. And then obviously you want to fill it. You can't just like stuff people with food constantly. You need to like walk between the places and see some of the city, right? Because that will also build a bigger picture. And in the end, we kind of created this concept of like filling bellies and minds. So we want you to be full and have good food. We want to fill your mind with knowledge, with stories, with all of it, and kind of through all of that, tell one overarching story that is like the theme of the tour, right? The history of Madrid, or whatever it may be in Rome or Paris, some kind of aspect of that city's culture or food. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like telling a story, but those are kind of like the things we've always had in mind, I would say. I mean, Lauren, I don't know what you would add to that.
No, you nailed it. That's what it is. Sense of place, story, the people behind it, the connection. It's an experience. It's not just the food, and it's not just a tour.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay. I think I got some goosebumps. Well, thank you guys for summarizing a little bit about, what it takes to really get a tour up and running, and really just your vision for Devour and how you do connect curious travelers with the local food and people. I think that's amazing. So if we can focus a little bit on the food, I think that's really what a lot of people who came today want to hear about. So before actually we talk about like wine and tapas, I wanted to start with some breakfast fare. I'm talking churros, I'm talking coffee. One person in particular really wants to know about how to find good coffee in Madrid. And I think this is such an important question because it is so easy to get bad coffee in Madrid. And James, you wrote a great article on why that is. You wrote an entire article all about torrefacto. It's on your website. I read it all the time. Link to it all the time.
Is it not broken, that link? I haven't checked it in a while, so I'm glad
it was broken, but I fixed it. Yeah.
You refixed it. Oh, thank you.
I fixed it. Yeah. But okay, maybe James, I think you'd be a good person to maybe talk us through what torrefacto coffee is and why exactly it can be so hard to navigate getting a good cup of coffee in Madrid.
In Madrid and in Spain, because and this was more so, say, 12 years ago when I arrived. Madrid and Spain, obviously, people drink coffee, and so there was a process whereby, I think it was after the Civil War. It was a little hazy when I was doing the research for this article, but there was a period after the Civil War, after the Spanish Civil War in the 30s, when there was a lot of poverty, and effectively there wasn't a lot to go around, including coffee. And so people had to find ways to kind of put filler into coffee and to kind of mask the fact that it was lower quality. And so they used this process that had been invented by miners in Mexico to kind of make coffee beans last longer, which is called torrefacto. And effectively, it's a process of after the roasting, or as a part of the roasting, kind of burning some sugar onto the outside of the beans, so it kind of seals them. And this was the way that the coffee was able to last for many months down the mine in like 19th century Mexico. And they used it in Spain, and it just kind of took off, I think, because it makes the coffee taste stronger. If particularly there's not a lot of actual coffee in there, or there's other things in the blend, which was important in the 40s and maybe even into the 50s, it makes it look even blacker, right? And so that is obviously, you want your coffee black. It makes it look strong, right? How we experience food is part of how we see food is informed by that. And so what it does do, though, it kind of makes the coffee taste a little bit, not a little, a lot sort of bitter and acrid. Which is the reason, and not a lot of Spaniards really know this, but it's the reason that effectively most people in this country drink their coffee with sugar, and often, at least sugar, but often milk as well, because it actually masks the flavor, because it's not very nice to drink. There are some hardcore defenders of torrefacto, and they love it, even people who aren't from Spain. And I must say, there's something nice to know about that there was something really unique about the coffee. Nowadays, even in the traditional places, you see more natural, what we call natural. So if you're in the supermarket, you'll see often torrefacto blend, or you'll see natural, which means it hasn't had this process applied. But even natural will not necessarily be using Arabica coffee. It might be Robusta, which is the lower quality. So, if you go into a bar and you have an espresso, it might just taste a little intense, and that's why. So you can add some milk. You can get a cortado, which is like a little espresso with a little bit of milk to cut it, or a little bit of sugar. But having said that, nowadays in Madrid and all over Spain, like good coffee, like artisanal coffee or whatever good, I know there's like second wave and third wave, and I don't fully understand all of that, but there's like hipster coffee any specific places, I can't even think of them off the top of my head. I'm sure Lauren will think of one.
I frequent those places, I have to say. And it's interesting. It brings about almost like, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but an interesting theme for me of like, you want to go to the kind of, I like going to the historic and very local places, but yeah, then when you're drinking that coffee, and I think that opened my mind. So when about 10 years ago, the first craft or third wave, whatever it's called, coffee shop started here in Madrid, which is still here. It's called Toma Cafe, and they've got a few locations now. And they were like craft roasters, and they started doing this type of, very good quality coffee. It was so welcome. And since that time, especially as we came out of the recession in 2008, 9, 10, a lot of young people pivoted into these types of small businesses that were taking traditions or foods that perhaps we'd had of lower, maybe more mass-produced quality. This happened with wine, with coffee, with cheese, with bread, and open their own shops. Now, the interesting thing here is you walk into a craft coffee shop in Madrid and you don't necessarily have that sense of place. So I sometimes struggle with that, but Madrid does have a lot of amazing coffee. And so just a few that I frequent are Toma Cafe, The Fix, Sierra Coffee. I'm forgetting the place that's right next to our office, but Kate, you can put that in the chat because we go there all the time. Ambu. And yeah, there's a lot. So basically, anywhere you're staying in the city, you can find really good coffee. But sometimes it's good to also go to the breakfast bars and just kind of stomach the bad-ish coffee. And
if it has the milk in there, if you have a café con leche, you don't really. My phone always rings on a webinar. If you have a café con leche, you won't notice the torrefacto already, so it'll be okay. Usually.
Awesome. Well, James, that was an amazing history of torrefacto. I think your article is great, and thank you for summarizing that. And also, like, maybe it's not to my taste or your taste, but please try it, right? Like, it's a cultural part of coming to Spain, so absolutely go and try it. You might end up taking home a bag or two of torrefacto. You might be one of the torrefacto fans, right?
Totally. Thank you for fixing my website.
No. We'll talk about that later, James. We'll talk about that later. But speaking of drinks, we got so many questions about drinks, and I guess it's okay. It's late here in Spain, right? It's almost 7 p.m. So I think it's okay if we bounce from coffee to something a little stronger. One person asked, what are typical drinks at the bars in Madrid? How are they different from different US bar cocktails?
I mean, can I take the first part, then you can take the different thing? I mean, typical.
Bars, James.
Yeah, I know I am. As I say, I wish I was more of an expert these days, but sadly I don't get to them as often. Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people when they go out for drinks just have beer, like a caña, which is a small beer, and it's kind of like fuel for being social in a way. That's how to go for cañas is to go out and you might, to hang out with your friends, eat tapas, drink some beer. But it's also common if you're having a meal to have wine. There was kind of like a generational divide, I think, and there still is somewhat. Like young people drink beer, and everybody drinks beer. I mean, you'll see people in their 80s having a beer, on the terraces. But I think when it comes to wine, maybe it's not as common with younger people, which I always found interesting because I've always loved wine. But I would find that my kind of peers or my Spanish friends would drink more beer. But obviously wine is super available at any time. Vermouth, I see someone mentioned in the chat, is common as it's actually originally from Barcelona. It's actually originally from Italy, but it is the tradition in Spain started in Barcelona with Italian immigrants that came in the 19th century to Barcelona, brought vermouth with them, and it was what you would have after Mass on a Sunday. And so now vermouth kind of fits into the culture, particularly in Barcelona, but also in Madrid. In Barcelona, it's like a weekend thing, like weekend day drinking, really. You like go for brunch kind of thing or tapas during the day, and you go for vermouth. People don't go to Mass as much anymore, but they still drink the vermouth. Whereas in Madrid, it's also kind of like just what you'll have as your first drink often. It's often served on tap. in Madrid, and you'll go to a bar, they'll have one tap which is beer and one tap which is vermouth, and you'll just have it to kind of open your appetite. And vermouth is a white wine that's been fortified with alcohol. It has about 15%, and it has caramel in there. It has a sweetness to it, and also it's steeped in different botanicals. So vermouth is super common. I always say, like, 1 vermouth is good, 2 vermouths are great, 3 vermouths and you'll never make lunch. So it's really strong. So be careful if you have too much vermouth. And then someone mentioned gin tonic in the chat, which is like the classic. We don't have like a cocktail aperitif culture in Spain in the same way as maybe they do in other countries, like say France. Here it's more like, when gin and tonics were trying to be introduced into Spanish culture, people didn't know where to put it. So they put it after the meal, because we have a digestive culture. Like, you'd have a drink after a meal. So that's why gin tonics come after the meal. And they're huge, the gin tonics in Spain. They're really big.
Large.
Yeah, like, exactly. Scary. So those are kind of some really common ones. Obviously, also, you don't have to drink alcohol. I think people often get this fear, if you don't drink alcohol, you don't like much alcohol, that you have to drink alcohol to eat tapas. And not at all. Like, when it comes to, a lot of people are in the tapas bars just having a Coke, having sparkling water, or what's really common is 0 alcohol beer. You'll often find people in a bar, half the people are having beer with alcohol and half without. And actually, Spain is the largest drinker of, per capita, or whatever the kind of ratio is, of 0 alcohol beer in the world. Because there's such a strong beer culture, right? And so they've managed to keep the beer culture alive, but take out the alcohol. Doesn't quite taste quite the same to me, but it's not bad at a pinch. And for that, you would ask for a cero. So that's how you would pronounce it with the Spanish th. And that's very common as well. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but then how it's different from the States, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Lauren, do you want to answer that? Maybe there are some typical drinks that you would see here that you would also see in the US?
I mean, it's been a long time since I've lived in the US. So the prices are a little bit different. In the US, certainly a glass of wine can be a shock to the system, coming from Spain, where you can find everything from, $3.50 in today's world to kind of, you can get up there as well. But, we have a great variety of Spanish wines at kind of all price points and good quality throughout. So it's just, I think James kind of hit the nail on the head with the fact that drinking, now whether alcohol or not, is part of life. And there's the expression of, like, let's go have something to drink, vamos a tomar algo. And that doesn't mean necessarily alcohol. Just it's more the social act of getting together with your friend or whoever and sitting down and talking. And of course, well, you're sitting at a bar or a terrace and you have to order something. So you might order a Coke or the sparkling water or the vermouth or whatever. But it's not about the drink. And I also see, I guess, speaking of a difference, that is something I see. And certainly there are people who are really into their wines or craft beer. Yes, of course. But I would say the average person, and James or Cassandra, like, tell me if you think I'm off here, but isn't as knowledgeable about maybe wine or beer or food as they might be in certain parts or certain subcultures in the US, because it's not about going out and getting the best glass of red wine. And I struggle with that sometimes, because I was like always, I want to go to a place that has really good wine or really good beer or whatever. But it's like for my Spanish family and friends, they don't care. It's you're going to get something that's decent, and it's about the social act way more than it is about what you're actually having in your glass. So I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there was actually a question. Cynthia said, I don't drink much coffee or alcohol. Is there tea or kombucha? One thing you will find in just sort of traditional places, and even more modern ones, there's not a lot of variety, maybe particularly in non-alcoholic drinks. Like tapas bars that kind of more do lunches and stuff will have tea. Like, you can get a cup of tea. Kombucha, like, not really. Like, you wouldn't find that. And you won't really find mocktails. And really, like, super modern places you will. But there's not the same, it's kind of, they've all got the same list of stuff, really, unless it's a specialty place.
Kate mentioned mosto. That's a good one. Grape juice.
Yeah, that's common.
Mhm.
And of course, sangria is for tourists. You're allowed to drink it, and it's lots of fun. Spaniards drink sangria when they're like having a party, and you kind of like fill the bathtub with sangria, but it's not like Spaniards don't go into a bar and order a glass of sangria. What they'll ask for is a tinto de verano, which I know Kate will put in the chat, which is really just a simple version of slightly sweet soda water or Fanta with red wine. And so that's really common. And it's just more refreshing and a little like less strong, not as strong as a glass of red wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would agree with what both of you were saying. And yeah, I think the act of getting together is often way more important than actually what you are drinking. But yeah, I've been surprised sometimes when I order, say, a glass of red wine and it comes out freezing cold.
You get used to that. You start to look forward to it. Because it's
Yeah,
not probably
well,
very good wine anyway. It's pretty basic stuff. So if you're going to a good place and you're ordering really specific wine, it's probably not going to be freezing cold. But if it's really basic wine, then it may be cold, and that's just kind of the tradition. And you can always just warm it up in your hands.
Yeah, or it's summer and it heats up quickly anyway.
Totally, yeah, it keeps you cool.
But James, I love that you just debunked a myth about sangria. Are there any other tapas myths that we can quickly debunk?
I can't think on the top of my head about myths. I would say that don't fixate on tapas as like one thing. One thing I always used to say on the tours is like, we have a verb in Spanish, which is to tapear, which is to go to tapas. And I think that again reflects that the tapas or eating tapas is like, you have to think of it like an activity. Again, like Lauren was saying about the drinking, the focus is on people, being with people, like community, on connecting. And so, to go for tapas, those tapas could come in any shape or form, and you might not even eat anything called tapas on a menu. In Madrid, you'll see the word raciones or media raciones. You often won't see the word tapas. You'll see the word tapas on a menu. In Seville, though, because the culture of eating changes. Here in Bilbao, where I am, you'll see pinchos, which is just kind of like the version of tapas up here. So I think the key is, learn a little bit about the regions, the food in the regions before you go, but also know that to go for tapas is just really about sharing food, sharing drinks with friends, hanging out, kind of like seeing where it goes, no fixed plan. And so I would say, don't sort of get too fixated on like the size of a plate, or if you see the word tapas on a menu, or is this are we in a tapas bar now? Most bars aren't called tapas bars because it's just bars are where we eat. And we eat sharing food. So I made a video recently where I said if the bar has the word tapas in the title, it's probably a tourist trap, because Spaniards don't need to see that word in the name of a bar necessarily on a menu. But they'll still always eat the same way. They'll share in many cases, not always, but in many cases.
Yeah, well, speaking of the different dishes, just really quickly, I want to hear, what are your favorite dishes to eat in Madrid? It could be savory, it could be sweet. I'm just curious to know, like, for you personally, James, for you personally, Lauren, what is one dish that when friends or family visits you, what do you say you absolutely have to have this when you're in Madrid?
I'm going to give you three that I don't know if I would even say family and friends have to have it, but I have to have it, and especially now at this time of year. So kind of all year round, pincho de tortilla, so Spanish omelet con cebolla with onion. I like mine what I call medium rare. Here in Spain, you can get it kind of all well done, very, very cooked, or super runny, and that kind of varies based on the south of the country is more cooked, the north tends to be more runny. Madrid's right in the middle, and so you can kind of find both. So I like a place that does it a little slightly, not runny, but like medium rare. Love pincho de tortilla at any time of day, any day of the week. And then this time of year, I need to have a cocido madrileño. Usually the places that do the daily lunch menu of the day will serve it on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. They'll have a full cocido as part of their lunch offerings. And I love cocido. And then the last one, I'm going to forget it now. Calamari sandwich. I mean, it's such a thing that you don't expect from Madrid. We do it on our ultimate tour, and fried calamari stuffed in yummy baguette, maybe a squeeze of lemon if you dare. And it's just like comfort food. So those are my three.
Delicious.
I think for me, I love a dish called boquerones in vinagre, which are slightly marinated fresh anchovies that are, you'll see them, they're white, and they're just marinated with some vinegar and garlic and parsley, and they're really sharp, and you can eat them on like a potato chip, or, they'll just be served as a plate. I love those. A kind of a variation on that is called a matrimonio, whereas where the anchovy that's been marinated, what we call a boqueron, is combined with an anchoa, which is the same fillet, but it's been salt cured. So more what you would think of when you think of an anchovy, although they're better in Spain than in most of the world. They're not like those highly salty, shriveled up things on pizzas. They're kind of more elegant and not as salty. So you can combine those. So that's one thing I love. There's a cut of meat that I love, which is, there's the Iberian pig, the black-hoofed pig that make the jamón ibérico de bellota, the acorn-fed black-hoofed pork or ham. But you can get some cuts of that pork that is, grilled or cooked. One is called the secreto ibérico. Or there's another one called Pluma Iberica or Presa Iberica. And I know Kate will write those in the chat. And those are just really delicious cuts of pork that you might not be used to seeing because, maybe you come from a country where there's more like beef that you have on the grill and things like that. But these are just really special cuts of pork that have a really delicious kind of marbling in them, and often served a little bit pink, which I think can be a little bit strange for people who are used to having their pork really well done. But I've never got sick, and I don't know anyone who has, so it's all good. A last one, I don't know, God. If you're in Madrid, there is something sweet that is kind of a classic to get. There's a pastry shop called the Mallorquina, which is in the Puerta del Sol, the central square, and there you can get a napolitana, which a napolitana is just like this. It's actually very simple, but it's kind of like if you grow up in Madrid, it's what you get as a treat when you're in the center, right? And so you go and it's a pastry cream or a vanilla cream filled pastry or chocolate filled. You can get the chocolate one or the crema, which is the vanilla cream one. And they're just turning them out all the time. And, you want to get one. Hopefully, you can't really demand this. It's just like luck of the draw if they're warm just from the oven. And you just get it to take away and you can stand in the square and eat it. Or you can stand at the bar and have a cup of coffee, and it's delicious. So really, really good. And actually, when I say standing at the bar, someone asked, because I know what it's like to travel alone and not know kind of how that works. So Angkor said, I'll be mostly solo in the evenings after work. How is dining alone? Totally fine. Like if there's a bar room, you could, you could just stand at the bar. You can ask for a table, obviously, but yeah, very normal for people to dine alone. I guess maybe people more do it at lunch because they're like working, things like that. But there's like I'm going to be dining alone tonight. And all I'm going to do is go out, look for a place that looks kind of like good and busy, maybe check Google. Always try 4.5 and above, and yeah, just stand at the bar and grab a few pinchos, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, there's so many things to discuss about food in Madrid and Spanish food. And you guys, we're going to have to do another webinar because there's just so much that we can get into on this broad topic. But thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. Before we move into the discount, are there any parting words that you wanted to share or any other last insights?
Come to Madrid. I hope we've convinced you. If you haven't been here, and if you have, then time to come back. So much to explore.
Yeah, we'll see you here.
Awesome. Yeah, well, definitely I'm rooting for us to do another webinar because, yeah, there's just so much to get into. But for those of you who do have a trip to Madrid on the books or in the near future, please consider using our special discount. We don't run discounts that often, so this is a special deal. We will be offering 20% off either our walks or our Devour Tours through the end of the weekend. So you've got a few days to check this out. Go and check out all of our tours, and no need to write it down. We will be sending you, as I mentioned, an email after this recording or after this webinar ends. You'll get the recording, you'll get links to some of our favorite Madrid resources, and you'll also get the discount code there. Finally, make sure you stay in touch with us. So follow us on social media. Make sure to follow Walks Tours and Devour Tours both. Also check out our blogs for more amazing travel tips. And also, I would also plug James's content here. James's amazing YouTube channel where he's always pumping out amazing content. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming shoot in Bilbao, James. I can't wait to see what you're covering there.
I know, and it's supposed to rain all day tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. It's going to be a challenge, but that's the north of Spain, right? That's why it's so beautiful and green.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. And then last but not least, make sure to sign up for our email newsletter. And yeah, just thank you guys again. Thanks so much for coming. I can see that the chat was on fire. We had so many engaged people. So really exciting to see all this excitement around Madrid. Thank you again, and hope to see you soon in Madrid. Bye. Adios.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Ciao.